Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Mezzo. My name is Sabatina Morrow and I am so excited that you are here to join me today for this episode. Right off the bat, I'd like to remind you that these episodes are not intended for medical use or to replace anything a professional has told you. These are just a reflection of mindfulness from one artist to another. This week, I would like to discuss boxes. Boxing, being a boxer, and trying to shove yourself into a very small box. I was on a gig a few weeks ago and I had the honor of meeting a woman who just recently turned 100 years old and was still teaching voice and participating in the arts scene. She had been an opera singer, doing probably similar things to what I do now at my age when she was my age. And we chatted after a performance and it was interesting because I think she had this understanding and we shared this understanding that my voice was similar to hers in some ways, different ways. Because after chatting about some mundane things and then chatting about the job, she looked me dead in the eyes and she said, "Don't put yourself in a box ever. The industry will do that for you. Just sing. The people around you will decide whatever they decide. Trust yourself. Sing what you want to sing." And it was a really beautiful sentiment. It was something really worth hearing, not only for myself, but for me to pass on to others. And it's something that I myself firmly believe in. In all facets of life and of jobs, there are always going to be boxes to fit into and metaphorical or real shoes to fill. And maybe it's controversial, but I think that it is possible to have a fulfilling life and career without ever actually squashing yourself into a box. Although without ever is a really, really bold statement. Sometimes we do put ourselves in boxes because we want to, but I think that no matter how we slice it, outside eyes and ears will always put us into whatever box they need us to be in. And I know I've talked about this in previous episodes, but not being put into a box is not always a bad thing. If the box is too small for you, you cannot grow. With summertime on the horizon, let's pretend for a moment that we as humans are not all that different from plants. If you're existing in the wild, there's always a chance that someone is going to see your beauty, pluck you up, stick you in a planter on their windowsill, and watch you grow. Or maybe that doesn't happen to you and you are still out in the wild, growing freely wherever your seeds landed. There are also other options, but those are the two we're going to focus on. Whether you are in a box or a planter or not, you need the same basics as others to survive. Food, water, sunlight, fresh air. These things are not negotiable. Without these things, plants cannot grow and they cannot thrive. And similarly, neither can we. As humans, we are no different from these plants. We need our own set of nutrients to be able to develop. And as artists, we may need a little bit more TLC than others to be our most successful selves. The basics for humans are the same as plants: food, water, sun, and air. So if you find yourself deprived of any of these things, professionally or personally, take a step back from where you're at and tend to your garden. When you have your nutrients, you are best suited to grow. I want to jump back into the original thought of not putting yourself in a box. This, I think, is not the same as putting yourself out there to be planted. So what I think my friend was saying is that we should not force ourselves to be planted where we cannot grow. So this is not working with, say, an agency or a union where you are growing in a greenhouse and free to grow, but being guided and helped. For example, I will often see artists make snap decisions about their artistic classification. So for singers, this can look like voice classification, ultimately causing us distress over not sounding like the industry standard. So this is something quite prevalent in the industry that I have absolutely taken part in myself, but no longer agree with. I do think there can be a time and place to put yourself in a box, but I do not think we should do so in a way that snuffs out our creative frames or causes us personal identity root rot. So this box, the metaphorical box that my 100-year-old friend brought up, is not the box of being planted in a planter, or not the box of getting to grow in a safe space. It is the box that we create. So very specifically, it's our little cardboard box that we build for ourselves and we decide we have to fit into because the greats have been in those boxes. But I think sometimes the greats created those boxes and they didn't do it on purpose. But we had great artists before us that built empires on just being their amazing selves. And over time, historians and other artists created standards and used those original singers or original artists to build boxes. I don't think that any of the greats woke up one day and said, I want people to be like me for the next 1,000 years. But we decide for ourselves as artists that someone who sang 1,000 years ago is the standard. Someone who used gold for the first time in a painting was the standard for the today artists. And I think that is the metaphorical box that is so important to remove from our lives, to remove from our thought process. Learning what makes you flourish and what makes you wilt can be a very useful skill. It wouldn't be an episode without a personal anecdote. So, I have recently found myself looking at what others are doing in my industry, what they are singing, and where they are living, and what they are thinking. And I say to myself, if I sang these arias or moved to this city or auditioned for this company, maybe I'd make it. And to be honest with you, it has been ripping me apart. I don't think it's a bad thing to speak candidly about the things that darken our minds, and for me, this has been a very heavy weight on my thinking and on my journey as of late. I have been so concerned with the people around me for what feels like years, but it's only actually been for me a few weeks, which is how I know that this is something that is blocking me from growing. I have created a box for myself that is just devoid of time and space, and it feels like I have been stuck in a rut for my life, but it's really only been 4 weeks. So I have made myself think so much about something that it feels like a lifetime's worth of thinking. I have been shoving myself on my own accord into a metaphorical industry box, which has made me forget about all of the great things that I can do and all of the great things that I have already done, which is wild, coming from someone who talks about mindfulness in the self, right? It can certainly feel that way, but these are normal thoughts, and I am not the only one, nor am I the first person to have these thoughts. My 100-year-old friend probably went through this too, probably around my age, probably thinking very similar things. And I'm certain she spent parts of her life sticking her roots into pots that were too shallow, thinking, well, if they did it, so can I. Which I realize a lot of us do. I have watched myself and others make snap decisions about what would make the most sense for them industrially or on a career-driven journey, and overnight change their entire professional social media presence to reflect a new decision. And I've done it. I've changed my website, my identifiers on a website real quick. And then about a week goes by and I go, why did I do that? Why did I change everything just because I want to fit into a box? Because I very well know that I don't fit into that box. But enough people have given me enough opinions that I start to question, the garden that I'm growing, the seeds that I have planted, and the developments that I have made. I, metaphorically, went out and bought huge bags of soil and fertilizer. But 10 people told me that I should be using mulch. So I go out and I buy mulch. And I hate it. I hate the way it smells. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me grow. I just sit there. But 10 people told me that it should feel right. So I go and I change my identity. So I go and I update my classifications. I rewrite my resume. Because 10 people told me that they know better than I do. But everything in my garden has wilted. Getting no sunlight, I'm getting no air, and I'm starting to resent gardening. I just want to let weeds overrun everything, and I just want to let it, squash all my plants that I spent years planting and harvesting and cultivating. I'm going to fill my garden with things that I don't like to fit into someone else's box. It doesn't make sense to me. I think that taking away the fertilizer and the sun and the water that works for you. Only you know how much sun you need to grow. Only you know how much water and what type of fertilizer. But we will so often let others tell us what to do, or we will create something in our head and believe it wholeheartedly so that we look more desirable, more hireable, easier to work with. You probably already are all of those things. And the grass is quite literally always greener on the other side. It's not greener, it's a different shade of green. You could be the most beautiful yard of grass in your neighborhood, but it always looks better somewhere else because it's different. I think it is so important to fully realize who we are, where we've come from, and how hard we work. Let yourself grow where your seeds have landed. Do not try to fit yourself into someone else's planter or garden if it is not yours. The flowers that I grow and the flowers that I plant will not survive in my colleague's garden. They have a totally different set of rules and regulations than I do. It is cliche, but I do think that in time, what is meant for us will come to us. If you find yourself looking over into someone else's garden, try looking around yours instead. I can guarantee that whatever you have planted and whatever you are growing is a lot more beautiful when you stop sizing it up to what others are growing. Whether you are a singer or someone with a completely different career, or you're an artist or an instrumentalist of any sort, it is so easy to look at the person next to you in an orchestra and say, wow, their saxophone is much nicer than mine. Or, wow, that person uses much more vivid oil paints than I do. Or, that person can type more words a minute than I can. There are things we can change, and there are things we cannot. I think it's important for us to know which is which. It is important for us to be able to establish ourselves as who we are, and where we want to be. And if it's not something that you can't fix right now in 5 seconds, why would you expect yourself to be able to slap on a new identity overnight and let that fix it for you? If you can't completely change your artistic identity right now, don't assume a new one and hope that everyone around you believes you. Be who you are and sit with it. Learn to love it. You don't have to change your identity to fit in a box. You don't have to update your socials for people to believe your story. Let your talent, let your artistry, let your passion speak for itself. Because I promise you that all of the things that you are worried about and all of the things you are scrutinizing in your own life, someone else is looking at you and thinking, if I could only be like them. I wish I were as good as them. I wish I had what they have. I wish I could sing, or I could paint, or I could act like they could. And I'm not saying that you should go around thinking that everyone, is thinking that they're not good enough. But a lot of us are. And for us to learn that we are good enough, that we are meant to grow where our seeds have been planted. It's, to me, one of the most important lessons that I have been learning, that I am still learning, because even though I'm talking about it today, doesn't mean that I am a professional by any means at understanding this. I am not working at a nursery. I am not someone who, can every day wake up and know that their garden is perfectly tended to and that everything is in place, but I'm working on it. And I hope that if you need to work on it, we can work on it together. And that this can serve as a reminder to you that no matter where you have been planted, you are worthy of growing. And you do not have to uproot yourself or let your roots rot because of someone else's garden. We are all incredible. We are all talented. And if you've made it any amount of time or to any level in your industry, you're there. Don't force yourself into a box. And just really look around at what you've done today. Really look at what you've done. And celebrate, because it's so important. I always say be your biggest fan. Now is the time. No more boxes. So my friends, I would like to invite you to breathe in 5s with me. So if you're new here, that means we breathe in for 5, we hold for 5, we breathe out for 5, we hold for 5. So with me, breathe in and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you go about your journey this week, month, year, or beyond, find moments to look at the beauty you have cultivated in your life. Learn to trust those who want to see you succeed, and learn that the grass is greener right where you are standing. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sabatina Morrow. This is the Mindful Mezzo, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Bye.